All right, this is lesson 8, 5-8, converting customary units of measure. So we're going to be doing customary and we're also going to be doing metric. Customary are the ones that we're used to. These are the ones used mostly in the United States. And metric are used typically outside of the United States. So we'll talk about both of those. One thing that's important is we want to remember that when we are converting smaller units to larger units of measure, we need to divide. And when we are converting larger units to smaller units, we want to multiply. So, for example, um, you guys all know what a gallon of milk looks like, right? It's that big jug that you hold and we pour it into cereal, a glass of milk. So we need to convert 4 gallons of milk and we want to know how many quarts. So we're going from a large amount, gallons, to a smaller amount, quarts. So because we're going from a larger unit, gallon, to a smaller unit, which is a quart, we're going to multiply. So here's a gallon. I'm just drawing a picture. Here's a gallon, and here is a quart. Here's another quart, and another quart, and another quart. So quarts are actually smaller amounts than a gallon. And I need to know what the conversion factor is. So how many quarts are actually in 1 gallon? So it's hard to memorize because there's a lot of different conversion factors. So you are going to get charts to help you, okay? So these are the customary units of measure. We're talking about length. We can convert different lengths, feet to inches, yards to feet. We can convert weight. And we can convert capacity. So this is what we use to cook, measure liquids, stuff like that. So here, I know that 1 gallon is 4 quarts. So that's what I'm going to use for this. Okay. So I know that 1 gallon is 4 quarts. And I'm writing it as a rate. 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. Okay, well, if I want to know how many quarts, how many quarts is 4 gallons, I do the same thing that I've been doing, what you guys have been learning about, which is making equivalent rates. So how do I get from 1 to 4? I'm increasing, so I multiply by 4. Well, what do I have to do on the bottom? I have to multiply by 4. 4 times 4 gives me 16 quarts. So now I know, here's my equivalent rate. I know that 4 gallons is the same thing as 16 quarts. So I can write 4 gallons equals 16 quarts. Okay, so this is one way to do it. This is using everything that you've been learning, which is an equivalent rate. I'm going to do 3 examples, one with length, one with capacity, and one with, what was the other one? Weight, converting. And there's 2 different ways we can convert. Using an equivalent rate, which you've been doing, and there's also something new called dimensional analysis, which I'm going to teach you as well. All right, so converting length. If I want to convert, and this relates to your Savvis, and I think this is example 1 in Savvis, you're converting 4.5 feet to inches. So how many inches is 4.5 feet? That's what we need to figure out. So the first way that we could do this is make an equivalent rate, which you've been learning. You start with your conversion factor. 12 inches in 1 foot. And if I didn't know that, I can go over to my chart and I can look and say, 1 foot equals 12 inches. That's the conversion factor. So I write that down. 12 inches equals 1 foot. And we want to know how many inches is 4.5 feet? And if you look, see how I circled the inches in green? The inches and the inches are on the top, and the feet are on the bottom. That's important because dimensional analysis is a little bit different. So what do I do to get from 1 to 4.5? I multiply by 4.5. I have to do the same thing on the top because it's an equivalent rate. 12 times 4.5. Let me get my calculator. 12 times 4.5 gives me 54. So I have 54 inches is the same thing as 4.5 feet. Okay, now you guys are good at this, using the conversion factor and making an equivalent rate. This is something new. This is the dimensional analysis. So you're going to start with what you want to convert. Start with what you want to convert. If we go back to the question, we want to know how many inches is 4.5 feet. So we have to convert 4.5 feet. So I'm starting with that. 4.5 feet. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply it by the conversion factor. And the conversion factor is 1 foot is 12 inches. The only thing that I have to make sure I do is make sure that the feet here is diagonal from the feet over here. Because we want to cancel them out, just like we cancel out numbers, right? We can cancel them out. So we have feet, that cancels out, just like we would cancel out a number. And now I have 4.5, which is over 1 essentially, times 12 over 1. So what is 4.5 times 12? Well, we did that up here when we did the equivalent rate. We know it is 54. So that equals 54, and our inches we did not cross off, so that is what we are going to use to label it. 54 inches. Okay, so that's example 1. Let's do example 2. This is also in your book. So now I want to convert capacity. I want to convert gallons to quarts. Remember, this is just like the other one. We're going from gallons is bigger than a quart. So we're going from big to small. All right, so we're going to do equivalent rate first. Okay. Let's look and see what is the conversion factor. So if I want to go from gallons to quarts, I know 1 gallon is 4 quarts. This is my conversion factor. Okay, so let's start with that. Okay, we got 4 quarts is 1 gallon. It equals, this is what we're trying to solve, how many quarts for 15 gallons. So how do we get from 1 to 15? We have to multiply by 15. So what do we have to do on the top? We have to multiply 4 by 15. Okay, so let's look. 4 times 15, and we get 60. So I know that it is 60 quarts for 15 gallons. So the answer is 60 quarts for 15 gallons. That's when we use the conversion factor first. Here's dimensional analysis. So we're going to start with what we want to convert. Remember, we want to convert 15 gallons, so that goes first. 15 gallons times the conversion factor, which is 4 quarts for 1 gallon. We have to make sure that the gallons are diagonal from each other. So this is just like 15 over 1 times 4 over 1. We are going to cancel out the gallons because we want to know the quarts. Okay, just like when we cross cancel, we can cancel out the words too. We have 15 times 4, which is the same exact thing that we did here. We just did 4 times 15. We get 60 quarts. Okay, that's capacity. One more. This is weight. And this is example 3 in your Sabbath. So if we want to convert weights, we're going to start with converting 10 ounces to pounds. 1 ounce is smaller than 1 pound. So here we're actually going to be going from a smaller to a larger unit. So this one's going to look slightly different. So let's start with what we do know, equivalent rates. So I'm going to look and see what is the conversion factor from ounces to pounds. Okay, so here's weight. Here's ounces, here's pounds. So I know that 1 pound equals 16 ounces, or 16 ounces equals 1 pound. That's what I'm using. So I'm going to start with that. Here's my conversion factor. 16 ounces equals 1 pound. I write it as the rate. Okay, well, I want to know how many pounds. So I put the pounds underneath. How many pounds is 10 ounces? So this looks a little bit different, but if you notice, the pounds and the pounds, because this is an equivalent rate, they have to both be on this, like underneath. You could put it on the top too. It doesn't matter as long as they're both on the same line. If I drew a line through here, right? They're both the same. And then ounces lines up too. All right, so how do I get from 16 to 10? Well, I'm going from a larger number to a smaller number, so I have to divide. So the way that I figured this out is I divided 16 by 10 on my calculator. I'll show you. 16 divided by 10 equals 1.6. So if I multiply 10 times 1.6, I get 16. Or if I divide 16 by 1.6, I get 10. That's the middle number. And when we divide and multiply, it goes back and forth. So I divide by 1.6, I get 10. So what do I have to do on the bottom? I have to do 1 divided by 1.6. When I do that, 1 divided by 1.6, I get 0.625. So I'm getting a number that is less than 1. 0.625 pounds. So 10 ounces gives me 0.625 pounds. So that's using the equivalent rate. If I use dimensional analysis, I'm going to start with what I want to convert, the 10 ounces, and I'm multiplying it by the conversion factor, which I know is 16 ounces is 1 pound, or 1 pound is 16 ounces. I just have to make sure that I have diagonally the ounces, because that's what I want to cancel out. Then I can go ahead and multiply across. This is the same as over 1. 10 times 1 is 10, and 1 times 16 is 16. So I get 10 sixteenths. Now we know that this means divide. So if I divide, I'm going to get the same thing. 10 divided by 16 gives me 0.625.
Please excuse the interruption. Canary Valentine, please report to the main office.
And the only thing that's left for units of measure is pounds. So I get the same answer as this. So it really doesn't matter which way you do this, whether you use equivalent rate or dimensional analysis. There's 2 different ways. This is what you guys are used to doing. However, this might be easier as long as you remember to make sure you multiply it by the conversion factor and make sure that your units can cancel out.